I do want to start off with thanks, because this event was very hard to pull off. So, first of all, to my daughter, Jessica Helscher, who did all the major organizing and the food, and my sister Rose, where is she? And her husband Vernon. I'd like to thank Steve Raymond and Harrison Vine from Kensington Sound for helping. And I'd like to thank the staff here at the Supermarket. This is a fabulous place. I played here actually a couple of times with my band, and it's always been fantastic. And I really like the staff here. It's too bad about the kitchen not being open, but we're under very strange and difficult circumstances these days. So please come back and enjoy the food. It's a wonderful place. So, the book, that's what we're here for. It was such an incredibly interesting thing that happened to me like over the last 10 or 12 years. This book was an ongoing process. It went through lots of hills and valleys. There were months where I didn't write anything. And then all of a sudden there'd be a flurry of small stories. And then I didn't know where it was all headed. I was just told to keep writing by David McFarlane. Just keep writing and we'll see what happens. So it culminated almost to the date 2 years ago. I was in Mexico with that wacky British fellow staying at his place. And I just said, I'm going to finish this thing. I'm going to just sit down here and finish this. I've got the time. I've got my laptop. There's no excuse. So I sat down for 10 straight days. And for me, writing 4 to 6 hours a day, that was a lot for me. But anyway, I did it. And I read the stories. I rewrote them. I read them again. I rewrote them again. And I was writing all the way back on the plane back to Toronto. And when I landed in Toronto, I said, I've done it. I finished a book. I couldn't believe it. So I felt triumphant. So I called up David McFarlane and another dear friend, John McFarlane, and I said, listen, I have an announcement to make. I'd like to take you out to lunch. And they said, well, what is it? I said, I finished the book. This is one I've been telling you about. And they sort of stared at me and said, you what? I said, I finished my book. It's done. It's written. How do I print it? How do I publish it? How do I get it out there? They said, you finished your book. I said, yeah, it's done. And then somebody said, I think David said, well, have you thought of an editor? And I went, oh, yeah, well, no, but I rewrote the stories, over and over. It's been proofread, it's been this. I think you better get an editor. So that's when John McFarlane stepped up to the plate and said, I will help you edit your stories. So he started off with 3 and then it turned into the whole book. And it's been such a fascinating process because it's like music. People come into the studio and say, I have a song. And it could be a very good song. But there's that just one little element that producing it and arranging it and engineering it a certain way, bringing in the right drummer and the right keyboard player can elevate that song to a whole different level. And this is something I learned. I was just so ignorant of it. But editing is actually a phenomenal final step. And I have learned more about writing in the last 2 years of my book being edited than I ever thought or that I knew about writing for like the last 40, 50 years. So somebody asked me, well, what does it feel like to have your book edited? And I know this sounds a little sideways, but I thought of this in the middle of the night. It's like playing hockey. Playing hockey? Well, what the heck? What are you talking about? I said, well, when you start playing hockey as a kid, you run home from school, put your skates on, and then you run to the rink. You got to shovel the rink off, and you got to get rid of all the slush, and then you get on the rink, and your skates are bouncing because everything's all screwed up. And your friend passes the puck, and the puck goes like this, and never makes it to your stick. and then it gets to your stick and you try to shoot at the net, but it bounces sideways because it hits a clump of snow, and you don't score a goal. That's one way of playing hockey. Then when you get better, you join a league, and everything shifts. You go to the rink, it's indoors, the lights are really bright, the ice is like glass. You start skating and it's like, and you get the puck and you pass it and it goes straight to the guy. He passes it back to you and you score. That's the difference that editing brings to a book. It just takes everything you've said and makes it clearer and more powerful. So, that's a long-winded way of introducing my editor, Mr. John Brown. He will not take to the stage because that's not his style. But anyway, the book would not be here without him. And speaking of the book, I thought I would end this part of the evening by reading a story from the book. We thought all like to hear a story. Yeah. Oh yeah. The problem is, I need a book. You took email? All right, well, I don't know how good at this I'm going to be. I've never actually ever done this before. But I thought it would be good to read the very first story. And John came up with some very clever titles for a lot of these stories. And this one is called My First Time. It's not what you think. The first time I got paid to play music was in 1967. I've been playing in a neighborhood band that attempted songs by Jimi Hendrix, the Rolling Stones, and Led Zeppelin when I saw a band at our high school assembly that featured a trumpet and saxophone and covered songs by Herb Alpert's Tijuana Brass. Well, it wasn't rock and roll, but I did want to broaden my horizons, and the girls seemed to like it. So I switched to the band with the brass section. We called it TJBC for the John Bell Catastrophe, a not-so-subtle reference to our keyboard player, John Bell, who fancied himself an inventor. For a free performance for the Boy Scouts, John had designed an elaborate string of flashing lights, but during our third song, they began to malfunction. Shortly after that, the piano disappeared entirely. When we looked over to John for an explanation, he was crawling across the stage on all fours trying to figure it out. The Scouts were amused. We were not, hence the name. Looking back, I realized we weren't very good. In fact, we didn't know it, but we weren't good at all. We were just a bunch of teenagers from Willowdale trying to figure out the music thing all on our own. And then it happened. We were offered a gig, an honest-to-goodness paying gig, through a family friend. We were to play a Nurses Association Christmas party, and we had less than a week to prepare. We practiced furiously, and everything seemed to be under control until the morning of the show when I got a phone call from Mike, the sax player. Hi, Vezi. Berge was his brother and our bass player. Berge broke his left arm in the gym class this morning. You've got to be kidding. No, I'm not kidding. I can't believe it myself, but it's okay, it's okay. Our dad, their father was a doctor, he's put the cast in a hand curl position so that he can still use his fingers to play. How's that going to work? Isn't he in a lot of pain? Yeah, but my dad's given him some painkillers. So we're good to go. We can't miss this gig. It's our very first. And that's how the day started. In the late afternoon, we loaded up the cars. We had 3 Volkswagens, so it must have been a very comical sight. Roof racks wobbly with gear and more gear patched to the rafters inside. Our little caravan made its way to the drummer's house. His mother opened the door. We're here to pick up Brian. Brian's not here. He has to work tonight. Work tonight? That's impossible. We have a gig. We've been practicing all week. Yeah, well, that's too bad. Somebody called in sick. So Brian had to go in and take his shift. You can ask him yourself. So we drove to the Loblaws on Finch Avenue, where we found Brian in an aisle stocking cans of soup. When he saw us, his face went completely white. Brian, what the hell, man? We've got a gig. We've got to go now. Sorry, guys. No can do. I can't lose this job. But Brian, what are you going to do without a drummer? He just shrugged and went back to his cans of soup. We slunk back to the Volkswagens. What now? I moaned. We racked our brains. Then Mike remembered his friend Tukfor, who played the drums at social events at the Armenian Community Center. Would he do it? He doesn't even know any of the songs. Well, it's not like we have any choice, do we? So we drove over to Tukfor's house, interrupted his dinner, and convinced him who knows how to help us out. Now we're on our way to the gig. And Mike's in the back seat trying to teach Tukfor the songs. In the rearview mirror, I could see his pale face and 2 drumsticks going up and down on his knees. He was completely terrified. We all were. By the time we got to the hall, unpacked our gear, and set up on stage, we were already late. Bears was drugged up, ashen-faced, looked like he might fall over from the combined weight of the cast and the bass. Tukfor, visibly panic-stricken, was trying to put on a brave face, but how long would that last? Somehow we got it together and we began to play. After the first song, there was some scattered applause. After the second, the dance floor came to life. Hey, this isn't so bad, I yelled to Barish, who smiled back weakly, somewhat unsteady on his feet, but with his fingers still moving. So far, so good. It wasn't until we finished the 7th song that we realized 7 songs were all we had practiced. We were, how to put it, out of songs. Now what? Mike said, let's just play them again. So that's what we did. At first, the crowd didn't seem to notice. It was only after we began playing the same 7 songs for the 3rd time that they caught on. Somebody yelled out, "Oh, play Tijuana Taxi again. We love that one." The nice woman who had hired us came up onto the stage, completely flustered. "What are you doing playing the same songs over and over again? Don't you know any others?" She was on the verge of tears. "Oh, yes, of course I do," I stammered. "We'll just take a break now and discuss which of them to play." With that, we retreated to a room behind the stage where I tried to show the others how to play every song I knew, including a few I had never sung. It was desperation time. We knew we were sunk. And then just as we were about to go back on stage, a large, completely drunk guy stumbled into the room. "Hey, I know some Elvis tunes. I can help you out." Here was a lifeboat. Okay, we'll give you a shot. Of course, he was beyond awful. At one point, he actually fell over. As we lurched from one under-rehearsed song to the next, aided not at all by our impaired Elvis impersonator, we realized we were in the midst of a complete train wreck. And that's my last memory of that evening. Apart from the image of the nice woman who had hired us, pacing back and forth on the now empty dance floor, shaking her head, we were so embarrassed that we refused to take her money. In fact, we tried to make amends by stacking chairs and helping to sweep the floor. On the way home, I reconsidered my musical aspirations. And although I did go on to become a professional musician, it wouldn't be the last time that finding another line of work crossed my mind. For instance, a few years later, somebody asked me if I would like to play guitar in a country band doing a matinee at the Gerard Tavern, one of the roughest joints in Toronto, for $25. "Sure," I said. "How hard can it be? It's just country music." So there I was the next day in a bar full of beer-swilling men who were either laughing, cursing each other, or heckling the band. The singer didn't seem friendly, but the drummer kept giving me toothless grins and thumbs up. At one point, the singer called out a song by Creedence Clearwater Revival, and the crowd went nuts. It was a song I'd heard a lot on the radio, a huge hit, so I knew that I'd be able to play along. When the second chorus came around, the singer waved me up to the mic to join in and sing background vocals. I soon noticed him looking at me very strangely. Finally, during the piano solo, he leaned over and yelled, "Hey, what the hell are you singing, man?" I said, "I'm just singing what you are. There's the bathroom on the right." Bathroom on the right? You idiot! It's "There's a bad moon on the rise." Ouch. So, I forgot to thank the people that were so kind and took the time to record their video messages. So I'll say their names and we'll have a round of applause. In order, Rick Shepard from the Drifters, beloved friend. Mark Goodall, my wacky British friend. I could write a book about Mark Goodall, which I might. Daniel Lanois, of course. And Murray McLaughlin and Denise Donalds. Thank you, guys.